Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great webinar from cpaacademy.org. My name is Vaughn Smith. I will be your moderator for today's session on diversity and inclusion, one-on-one allyship. So glad you all have joined us today. We have some really great information. These are some of my favorite sessions to be on, so y'all are in for a treat. We have our two presenters up there on the screen, their webcam, so I just want to make sure that you can see them. I'm not up there. I'm going to let them take the show. So, but I want to make sure that you guys can see the title slide on the screen. You can hear my voice. You can see their webcams, and you can let us know over in the questions panel. So we're on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar interface or whatever side it's on. Go ahead and click on that. Say hello. Tell us where you're tuning in from so I know things are working A-OK on our end and on your end. And also know that the place that you are typing into right now in that questions panel is a place where you can ask questions to our presenters at any time. Please feel free to add those in. We'll try to address as many questions during our session as we can. If we don't get to all of them, we do send over a full report to our presenters afterwards so they can see any items that may have been missed. And also, let me know if you're having any issues. If you're having any technical issues with the polls or the audio, I'll do my best to answer your questions as quickly as possible to get you focused and back on track. All right, so let's go ahead and check in with our audience. Where are we coming in from? We're coming in from Puerto Rico. We also have San Antonio, Texas. We have Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have Manchester, New Hampshire, and Oklahoma City. Sunny Palm Beach, Florida. I'm in Gainesville, so I'm not far from you. In Richmond, in Canada, and Connecticut. Woo! All right, thank you all so much for letting me know. And let's keep going. All right, we have some handouts for you in the handouts panel. That's over there in the GoToWebinar interface. It's also available in your CPA Academy account. Your account is where you will find a recording of this session. You will also find your issued CPE credit in about 24 hours in there. And you'll also have an evaluation form because we always love to hear from you. Speaking of CPE credit, this session this session qualifies for 1 CPE credit. You need to remain logged in for at least 15 minutes and answer our polling questions. We have 4 for you today. You only need 3 for credit, but answer them all because, you know, it's just a whole bunch of fun to answer polls. So make sure you hit that submit button so it registers. Okay, I've covered everything. It's now my pleasure to welcome our presenters. Jina, take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you, Vaughn. Welcome everybody to another edition of D&I One-on-One. I was looking at the names, and people said San Antonio, New Orleans, Austin. I'm going to be there later, and aloha to whoever that is in Hawaii. I'm a wee bit jealous. But anyway, thank you for joining us. And today we have Susie Silver joining us to talk about allyship. And I was introduced to Susie from a former colleague. So Florence, if you're listening, hi and thank you. And the thing about Susie is allyship is I have allyship is her jam, right? She's an LGBTQ inclusiveness expert. She lives in Raleigh, North Carolina with her wife, 2 kids, and a dog named Clark Griswold. And she's here to talk with us today about how she welcomes people into spaces to learn regardless of their journey. And she's going to talk more about that today. But thank you for joining us, Susie.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to everybody out there. What an honor to spend time with all of you today. I can't wait for this conversation.
See what I mean by it's her jam? So let's start with that, Susie. When I called you and asked you about joining us today, you were super excited. What makes you so passionate about this conversation?
Well, and that's a great question to start with. I have really always been passionate about allyship and the idea of allyship, but then really translating that into action. And so where the main passion lies for the subject is speaking about the concept of it, how we can be productive as allies, but really how do we act? And I think there's a gap there for so many of us where we feel internally or even sometimes externally as an ally, but then there's just sometimes this bridge that we can't always seem to get over. And of course, that depends on different situations and kind of our comfort level with different things. But that is where a lot, again, of my work and my passion lies of, let's have conversations about this. What situations would you like to be more active in? What tools do you need to get there? And welcoming everybody into that conversation, into that space, regardless of where you are on the journey. I mean, we all know that this DEI journey is just that, and it's a lifelong commitment. And quite often we think it's got to be fast, and that would be nice. And sometimes that happens, but there's longevity to being an ally into this work, and there will also be ebbs and flows. So I will stop there, but that's kind of the opening to that question. So thanks for asking that.
Sure. And Vaughn, maybe what we'll do now is the first polling question to sort of see where everybody is.
Sounds like a great idea. Let's go ahead and put that on your screen. So you should see that now. Just asking, what is your confidence level as an ally? And this is our first poll. We keep our polls open for about 60 seconds to allow you to get your votes in. And then we'll let you know when we're closing it down. And make sure you hit that submit button. So again, poll number 1 on your screens.
While that poll is open, somebody knows where the name Clark Griswold came from. Somebody shared us up they shared a comment. National Lampoon's Vacation, Clark Griswold enjoying playing arcade and pinball games, perpetually optimistic. Is that who your dog is named after?
Yes, it is. It is.
If we were playing trivia, they would have won.
That's right. I know. Your prize today is learning about allyship, but that's awesome. I love it. Yes, that is the truth.
Oh, let me write down the here.
And Jina, do you want me to bring those up on the screen as well?
That'd be great.
All right, fantastic. Let me go ahead and close this poll down. So it looks like we have reached our voting threshold. So closing down in 3, 2, and 1. And let's go ahead and share that on the screen. So it looks like, and let me know if you can see that, Jina, just making sure.
Yes, I see 18% high, 39% medium, 8% low, 30% unsure, and 5% prefer not to answer. So thank you. And so I don't know, Susie, that sets us up because we have 30% unsure and then 8% low. So almost a third aren't sure. And so maybe a good place to start, you shared this, let me move the slide here. You shared this article that's on your website. We'll share the link with you in the chat. Do you want to start here?
We can start here. Yes, I'm as an ally. This says conversations, right? And the idea of a literal conversation, talking about things that can be uncomfortable at times, things that are outside of something that you may know, something you don't know. That's why they're called tough. And the work generally as an ally, when you have that unsettled feeling, when it is a little discomfort in what's happening, generally that means there's action being taken. Now, the more that we practice and the more that we talk and the more that we do, that discomfort will go away. But again, that is also situational. And so I did not write this article, but it's on behalf of my organization, Approaching Tough Conversations. Yes.
I just realized we never did the definition for those who weren't sure. Could you just real quick give us a definition of allyship?
Well, allyship, thank you for that question. And allyship, I will say, is very personal. So I will give my definition and what I believe it is, but I do want to open that space of for everyone out there, reflect on this, write it down somewhere, type it out today. That's a call to action in itself. So I just wanted to pause there for that. To me, allyship equals action. I know I'm being redundant. It really truly means stepping into a space, a time, a situation, a conversation, and acting in some way. Quite often that's with our words, but it can be with literal actions. And that can go from, yes, you say something, you see something or hear something, or, that's not right. You say something, do something. It can be from recognizing that maybe this is so broad, but purchasing from an organization or a shop or something that is not aligned with your values. And as an ally, you choose where that money goes or where that attention on social media goes, or, what you're amplifying. And so I could digress for a long time on what that means, but it's rooted in action. And so what does action mean based on the situation? And of course, organizationally, right? We're talking about work and the workplace, really understanding people beyond yourself. An ally truly is self-aware, and self-reflects on a very, very regular basis. So along with the action, and honestly, before the action, and then alongside it, we need to be self-reflective, being open to that, being aware, and being open to being pushed outside of our comfort zone. So to kind of bring that full circle, the action is also with that self-reflection and self-awareness. And I actually suggest to people to schedule time. If you love a schedule time to think about some of these diversity, equity, and inclusion things. Think about a situation you observed, or maybe you are in, maybe you are somebody who needed an ally. Talking about being an ally, but who also needs the allies. And sit and think, put 10 minutes on your calendar, grab a coffee virtual or in person with somebody, and actually say, hey, that's part of a conversation, which can be tough, it cannot be as well. But that needs to be a regular part of that action as well.
So you said something that, okay, you said a million things that got me thinking. But one of the things you said sparked an idea in my head. So I wrote it down: self-aware and self-reflection, and allyship is action. That means that, okay, so where I was coming from is that a lot of people think allyship is somebody in the majority acting on behalf of somebody in the minority. But what you're describing is every one of us from where we are can be an ally to someone else. And part of that is also personal growth and development. So it's a lot more than the way I think a lot of people talk about allyship.
Right. And I think there's a weight there. I really do feel that there is a heavier weight, and we need a heavier weight on people that are not part of an underrepresented group, advocating for those of us that are in underrepresented groups. So I don't want to detract from that.
Yes.
So I will state that, but I do agree with you that we all of us have the opportunity, and also and this is again my opinion, the responsibility to act beyond ourselves.
Right.
And I know we're talking about us as people, but think about situations that happen in the workplace, in educational systems, in your communities, in your homes, and what those statements can mean to you, and how you can adhere the thought so far to those different aspects of your life.
What I think, somebody just wrote allyship, it's where I live. Thank you, Anthony. What I think about that is allyship can be really big action, but it could also be, I'm sitting in a meeting, somebody makes a comment and gets overlooked. And I can become that person's ally in that moment in that room and say, well, no, I think we need to hear what, so-and-so just said. Or, no, I think I agree with so-and-so, and sort of be their support. I mean, and there are a lot of terms used for all of these, but it sounds to me like for you, allyship is really just taking some action to support others.
And that's so broad. So we can make a concept from it. We could just go and get a whiteboard out from that. And there's a couple things that you saying that sparked for me. First, the act, is this a small thing or a large thing? What is it? It could be, from the meeting to something that large. What I want to say, and this is a question I get asked all the time, Susie, is this act of allyship too small because I feel like it is? My answer is no. No act of allyship is too small. And I think the notion of what allyship or it could be activism or whatever that action is, has to be this gigantic thing at all times. And while that is important and people hold that space and are proud to champion those spaces, most of us are doing those things that are considered smaller, but they're not smaller. So what you're saying, something in a meeting, something you overhear, something you see in a store, a street, those things are really important. And honestly, then we'll gain the confidence from what we perceive as smaller actions, even though they're really not.
Right.
We gain more confidence, and then we'll be doing more acts of allyship. We'll have more conversations. Others will see you being the champion, and they'll model themselves after you. And the second thing, if I may, with kind of thinking about allyship and the broad sense and how big, how small, I really, really want to talk about the roadblocks to allyship. So what gets in our ways of being an ally? And a few maybe we've touched on, but I'm happy to do that now or later, whenever is great.
Well, so there's a question that says we need examples. And so I think, and that's from Susan. And I think part of where Susan, hopefully Susan, if I can be the voice of what your question is, part of what, so the most common way people define allyship is supporting a group other than the group you're a member of. So if I'm Black, well, I kind of am, then I can be an ally of someone who's white. If I am cisgender, I can be an ally of somebody in the LGBTQ community. If I don't have a disability, I can be an ally for somebody who is. I can be the voice for that person, a support for that person. And so that's a traditional definition of allyship. And I think where you're taking it is all of those things require action. So to be an ally, do something. And it doesn't matter how big or small. And so I think what Susan was asking for is, so what are some examples of the action that you're suggesting we take?
Sure. Most of the time it is speaking up. I will say that, exactly what we've said already. So most of the time, especially within the workplace. But let me just I'll give you something really specific. And generally it's the meeting, right? It's the Zoom room or the meeting room, and you hear or see something that's just really just off base for you. And when that receptor goes off, we have a choice. And I think now more than ever, people are making the choice of, I do really want to do or say something, but still have some of that confidence or not sure what to do and what to say. And that's why I want to get specific, in just a moment. But when that receptor goes off, that is your main marker. All of us have our instincts. And I bet most of us on this call have been in that meeting or been in an interview, have been at the conference or whatever it is, and something receptor goes off. So what I generally will say when you,
right?
That little voice.
Yeah.
And look, on my journey, I know we've talked, off of this, of course, I am an open book. I'm very open and I want to share a moment with everybody here. Way back years ago, I know that I dismissed that voice. I was not active. I made what I know now for me was not a right choice. So I will be active and mindful to not repeat that. And so that's the choice. So how I will say to approach a situation, hey, Susie, can we chat? And I know I'm going to tie it in a bow and it's going to be so nice, but this works. Okay. Hey, Susie, can we talk? Yeah, sure. Hey, in that meeting, something you said made me really uncomfortable. And I just wanted to point it out to you. And while I see, that's where that discomfort comes in. Oh, that is sticky, right? That's sticky, but yes, being proactive. So say, put it on yourself. I know this might be a little uncomfortable. I noticed this, I heard it, it made me uncomfortable. Here's why. Here's a suggestion of what to say. If you feel like you have a suggestion, if you don't, it's still an active allyship, and say, I'm working on myself as an ally, and I really felt very strongly that I just wanted to have a conversation about this. 9 times out of 10, somebody will say, in this particular example, well, what did I say? What did I do? And again, they will thank you for pointing it out. Pausing again. I know some of you are out there saying, oh, that's so much easier said than done, Susie. Yes, I know this. I'm in these situations every day. Right? But the other thing that you can do in tough conversations while we're still here, you can walk away, but you still have intended to act, and you did act. If you are then met with hostility, what are you talking about? You're being so sensitive, which is also a microaggression.
Yes.
You're being so sensitive. This is blown out of proportion. Say, hey, look, restate what you were restating. You can put it on you. I always say you can put it on me. You now all know me. This person said this, but say,
Susie
hey,
said
I'm
to
really
do it.
working on. Susie said to do it. I'm going to wind up getting emails soon. But that's okay. I'm working on my allyship, and this made me uncomfortable. I really wanted to talk to you about it. I welcome the conversation. I see this is not productive for you or me. So I'm going to excuse myself. And really, in the framework of courageous conversations that I do train on, walking away is the tip that I give, because you have to protect yourself, your mental health, yourself as that ally, and say, I know I did something, and I'm going to walk away. But again, if you approach it, and I say calling forward or calling in, it's not language that's unique to me, instead of calling out. Calling out as an ally, sometimes we need to, I say maybe it's a little spice. Like, it's like calling out is sometimes aggressive, right? It can have an aggressive connotation. Sometimes that is important because it's a very severe situation. Yes, exactly. But calling in is, again, that approaching with kindness, assume positive intent, you know, and on both sides, and then walking away when you need to. So there's a framework. So Susan, I do hope that helps a little bit. I know there's so many situational things, but that is how you could approach that at work. You could approach that at home. You can approach that in the grocery store, in a nonprofit that you volunteer for, but that is a framework of when you use your words.
Right.
Specifics as allies is, what do you consider sponsorship and mentorship? Quite often we think of, now in the workplace, it's one thing, but sponsorship often, from organization or leadership to a nonprofit, for example, equals money, which I know is important for a lot of nonprofit organizations. But think about where you can show up, your time, your expertise. Find a local nonprofit that you can link to and be a sponsor that can go beyond money. That's allyship. I mean, it's again, sponsorship or mentorship, but what can you do as an ally that doesn't always have to rely, on words? So I'll pause there.
So there were a couple of things. You said protect yourself, and then you said restate. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you said, like, restate what they're pushing back on you. And I know one of the things I talk about with my clients is restate your intention. Because you don't necessarily want to repeat the same thing you just said, because if they didn't hear it the first time, maybe you can restate it differently. But what you're saying is, that wasn't my intention. Maybe my intention was blank. And then you sort of step away. And I love the protect yourself, because a lot of times we forget that we need to leave these conversations and interactions intact. Otherwise, we might find ourselves shutting down, stepping back, holding resentment, doing some other things. And I think I heard you say something along those lines of, when you step back, you have to step back. I don't know if you use the words, but I'm thinking just sort of step back and let it go so that you can come back to it another time.
Yes, that you can come back to it and step back knowing that you may not have the opportunity to come back to it with this particular, whatever it is, but that should not deter you. That should not become one of the roadblocks of, well, and I've heard this too, Susie, I tried this and it didn't work. Okay. Like I said, it has worked, it does work, but it may not work for you or the situation. But don't let that become a roadblock to you doing something or saying something again.
Yeah.
Because it will work.
I know that feeling where I don't know how often I've had it. I had that, you said that little thing. I'm thinking I should say something, and for whatever reason I don't. And today, now that I know more, I almost always regret it. Almost always. Every now and again, I look back and I think, I'm glad I didn't, because it wasn't the right setting. There was a different way to approach it. Which gets me to, so I know we have to do a polling question here in a moment, but Anthony put in here, it is more effective to speak up during meetings rather than after the meeting. And I think you addressed this where context matters. You said something about how it can be, was it provocative or challenging? What word did you, because I think it's a both. It depends on.
It could be aggressive. Yeah, it's just,
that's it.
I thank you for that comment question. I agree. It is very situational, and really as an ally, and I don't know, our group, right? We're all very diverse here because we all hold different components of diversity. It really depends on the situation. And in that, if it is in the moment, right? A lot of times it is better in the moment to address something. Absolutely. So thank you for bringing that up. To be mindful, however, if who is this putting more attention on? Because sometimes if it is somebody that is receiving something unfortunate that isn't an underrepresented group, then there's more it's kind of this, we're just putting more blocks, and sometimes that can be too much or too heavy. However, I will say again, thank you for bringing that up. And two, it is situational. So whatever you would feel instinctually, again, would be most productive, one, for yourself as an ally, and being mindful of who you are stepping up for, speaking up for, whatever the situation may be very mindful, because sometimes, and this is something else that comes up, it's intent versus reception is huge. And we can talk in a little bit of actually later of what happens when our intent and then the reception don't align. We need to apologize how to do that. I'll give you some tips on that. But that intent versus reception, so just being mindful of the situation. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. So Vaughn, I think let's go to the third polling question about what's holding you back. Can we do that one next?
We sure can. Let me go ahead and bring that up onto your screens. So yeah, is there something that has held you back from being an active ally? That is our poll number 2 on your screens.
Karen said, I always say offer it up to your higher power to solve it if you can't. Whatever that higher power means to you. Which I think is Karen's way of saying, sometimes you just have to let it go and trust the process, I think. I don't want to put words into her mouth, but that's the way I was interpreting that. Let me see.
Yeah.
Here's another comment. So this is more of a comment than a question, but I'll read it. Michael says, I will say this as well. I am a queer Black male, and sometimes it's necessary for us to be allies within our communities as well.
Yes.
I've been guilty of being quiet when it relates to my own communities. The burden of allyship doesn't just lie with those outside of our various communities. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, Michael, that is absolutely, first, thank you for sharing and being so open. And yes, our community, I'm part of the community, as you all heard, our community, I do feel has a lot of work to do, and then outside of the community as well. But yes, thank you. Very important point.
So Vaughn, I think we can close the poll. I see people are still voting on it.
I have closed that poll right now, and I'll go ahead and share the results so you can see that onto your screens.
11%.
Yeah.
So it's kind of split across the board in terms of what has held you back. It's a mix of everything. The biggest response was not sure what to say or do. So maybe we can shift and talk about that, because you actually have right here on the screen the 4 steps in that blog post.
Right. So there's the 4 steps there in the blog post, which we'll leave up there again. And some of it we hit on already, but kind of moving that forward, there's a couple other things I wanted to add. So evaluate the end goal. Think about what is the goal. Is it, we want it to be beneficial. We want it to be supportive. We want it to be productive, positive. That doesn't always happen as a result, but that's the, evaluation of the goal. And then, of course, the empathy. And thank you all for sharing this poll. This is aligned with a lot of conversations I have. Susie, I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't want to mess up. So I know like that receptor's going off, but I can't.
It's safer to say nothing, right? It's safer to say nothing than say something and then say the wrong thing.
Right. And really that's changing. There's more invitation to give it a go and get it right or get it wrong. And it's how we recover from when we get it wrong. So thank you for giving this information of not sure what to say or do. I hope a little bit so far today has helped you just gain confidence. And this is such a high level conversation, right? We're just scratching the surface, but how to approach a tough conversation, a little bit of a script there of what to say, how to own it, how to walk away if you need to. And the things I wanted to add of the roadblocks, right? So having low confidence, right? Not knowing what to do, know what to say, that fear of, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to offend somebody. I don't want to add more to somebody that I know already has a lot.
Right.
So there's positive intent or there's positive thought there, but silence, and I can't speak for every person, at all, but silence is dangerous. And that's a very bold statement. I recognize it's a personal statement, but silence will not help us. Silence will not encourage those tough, sometimes I call them sticky, icky conversations, those uncomfortable things that we need to get through and muddle it up and recover from it. And so, you know, our bias, we all have bias. We all have bias. We're wired that way as humans. And then sometimes it's just exponential, but our bias can get in our way. So that goes back to that self-reflection and self-awareness. And, you know, I will say privilege, meaning, and we actually kind of skirted on privilege already, understanding ourselves and things outside of ourselves. When we do not understand and own our privileges and or challenges in life, and then we don't harness those for impact, that's where sometimes allyship also stops. And so that's a whole other day, another conversation, but that those are big roadblocks. But what is said here, yeah. And I will give you the when we muck it up, what to do in just a minute, but I'll pause there.
So maybe this is a when we muck it up thing, because when you were talking, I wrote down, I've tried this in the past, and tell me if this was probably not the right thing to do, but I've been in a room, somebody said something uncomfortable. I was worried that it might have landed on somebody else differently. And for whatever reason, they aren't necessarily speaking up. So I might say that what the person did bothered me. Does that make sense? So for example, you and I are in a meeting. Somebody says something, I know you, and I'm thinking, ugh, I'm pretty sure that bothered Susie, but I know Susie's not going to say anything. So I will. But I can't say it as my firsthand experience necessarily, but I want to try to find a way to say it so the person who said it knows that perhaps that wasn't a good thing to say. But if it's not my personal experience, is it appropriate for me to do that even? It's not my job to save you, so to speak, in that sense.
Right. So it is situational. I think you should say something.
Okay.
And again, own it. So owning it in the way of, this bothered me. I don't know if it's actually bothersome to other people in this room, like if it's live right on the spot in the room. I'm not sure, because it's not my lived experience that I feel like this would land, you know. And you also want to be careful. If you say my lived experience, are you actually pinpointing certain people? So it's hard to give the exact script, but I would say something. I would own it. Say, I don't know if I'm messing this up, but something's going off, that this was just not right and uncomfortable. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
So you can be vague enough, but you still have that act, and you see what happens.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say is, Jina, you don't even have to worry about how it landed on Susie. The reality is my radar went off, and that's what I'm speaking to. Something happened. And my radar is going off, and I got to say something. Because you may or may not have received it the way I'm thinking you have. Who am I to put myself into your shoes? Just speak in my own voice.
Right. Speak for your own voice. And then in part to that, if you truly, so that is more likely of a situation than you knowing if it did not land well on me, right? But in the situation, and we all know those people in our workplace that we know, like, you know, you can look across the room and say, I'm ready for lunch. You can look across the Zoom room and be like, oh my goodness, you know, like when you know truly, which I know those bonds aren't always there. And I know COVID's done a lot to our bonds, you know, organizationally, but you can also check in with the person after the fact as well and say, so you and I now know each other enough. After a few conversations, if we're in you probably know what might make me not feel comfortable or not. You could say, hey, that didn't land well with me. Just checking on you. And I say, what are you talking? And but sometimes on the flip side, somebody say, well, then that's going to bring a whole bunch of stuff up for them. Well, again, situationally, that is in one of the last slides. What's the end outcome, you know, and then understanding the positive intent, knowing, being self-aware. Who are you with? Who do you know? Who do you not know? So that's another part of get to know your people organizationally. Get to know the people in your organization. But that's a second step. That's a second tiered step to allyship sometimes of, the act is there. Let's not forget the people who might be hurting as well. Again, situationally, but I wanted to add that there. That can happen too, because it can also be bystander. There's a term a lot people are saying bystander.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that, yeah, and so that's it's kind of aligned with what we're saying. A lot of times people think bystander, which is true when there's something happening like an act of violence or there's, discriminate, something that's where you got to say it or jump in. And generally, let me just give a tip here. If you do see something, let's say you're walking down the street and you see something, you can go check on the person or people. Hey, state, I'm an ally. I'm here. What are you okay? What do you need? And then if it's noise, if it's whatever, but make sure those people know you are safe, because they don't know if there's a lot of chaos going on, what's happening. But say, I'm an ally. I'm an ally. I'm here. What do you need? Are you okay? And again, that's important. I'm saying that because unfortunately things are happening.
Well, and people don't know if somebody's rushing in, if they're yet accelerating the problem, versus trying to come and help. So
I'm a safe person. Yeah.
One of the things though you just said that I think is really beautiful is that sometimes people just need to be seen. And so when you said, I'm just checking in, are you okay?
Yes.
That person can really say, yeah, I'm okay, but I don't want to talk about it, or I'm okay, thanks for checking. And that's the end of it. I know some have done that for me in the past, and it feels really good. Even if I know at work, I don't particularly share emotions. That's just me. I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but I know in the past people might have come up to me and I might have said, thanks, and left it at that. They might not have known it, but it stuck with me. I remember those. So it's powerful. And so even if you do that to somebody and they don't seem to respond, I would say, I'm hoping that they still noticed it and appreciated it.
Yes. And you said seen, safe, and heard. That's a really big part of inclusion and general allyship as well.
Right.
And I love that. So take even the situation that something happened, just in general, an active allyship. You don't have to have the spark, right, of this situation or something said, hurt, whatever.
It's just validating that it happened.
And message. I mean, one of the things I generally do, it doesn't mean I'm any better or different, right? I just am sharing just in case it helps, right? Yeah, I do that. I kind of go through my friends and family, and I try to think about, if I have a moment, of quiet, who have I not talked to? Who have I not? And I'll just send a message. Hey, I was thinking about you. No need to respond, especially the people in your life that are part of underrepresented groups. And then also think about that self-awareness, what's going on in the outside world. So I almost always, there's certain friends of mine, I almost always get a message. This is outside the workplace. Almost always get a message when something LGBTQ comes up. There's an article, there's something going on in the Supreme Court. And while those are big, huge things outside of my control, oh, hey, how are you this week? Just like, I know why they're messaging me, but I love that. Like, exactly. And because they took the time to understand, yes, Susie, this is what she does every day. She loves this work. She's passionate. She never, I don't stop, but when I get those, it means a lot. And so therefore I try to pay that forward. Yeah. Another thing I do, and I have some friends I know are hurting. There's not much I can do. I send them a Starbucks card. Just like, have a coffee on me this week. Hope you're okay. Like those, and just thinking, well, is that about being a nice person? Well, maybe, I don't know. I hope I'm nice. I don't know. But
I think you're nice, Susie.
Thanks. But that's also what you just said. Bring it back to your point, and then I'll stop there. Seen, it creates safety, and then that also welcomes in conversations.
Mm-hmm. So when we were talking before this, we had a call, and you said, "What happens?" What are you laughing? Because you're like,
I say a lot of things.
So I wonder what she's about to say. You said how one of the things that you can speak to is, I try something, I screw up, and so the fear is, well, you said it earlier, I tried something and it didn't work, so now I'm never going to do that thing again, or now I'm not going to do anything because I'll feel like open mouth, insert foot. I've done it once. I proved that I can't do this, so then I shut down. What do you say to somebody who has those concerns?
Yes, that goes back to our 41%, probably, knowing what to say or do, and that fear, right? First of all, I want to acknowledge that is okay to feel. right? Let's share space in that. Because again, for the majority of us, our intent is there. We want to do something. We just don't know how. We don't want to make it worse. That's really the thing, you know. And then you said, okay, now I tried something and I did not work out.
Yeah.
So there's an apology. It's not a unique thing to me. So I want to acknowledge that. Some people call it a 3-point apology, although there aren't necessarily 3 points to this, but and then somebody who's written a book on allyship, her name's Amber Cabral, really great book on allyship. I think it's called Advocate to Ally. I might be wrong, but she uses this, and of course, I don't personally, I will say that, but I am sorry for moving forward, I will. So how do you recover from not getting it right? We need to own it, and owning it can feel uncomfortable. But, you know, hey, Susie, and this does happen. I'm so sorry. I automatically assumed that you had a husband. I really apologize. In the future, I would love to refer to your partner or spouse by name if you're comfortable with that. What's their name? And I say, Anne. Oh, Anne, thank you so much. So, you know, I'm so sorry for assuming that. In the future, that will not happen again. And just that you have to be genuine,
Yes.
authentic, state very specifically where the misstep or mistake was and what your intent is moving forward. And you still may get it wrong again, but you're in that practice of owning it. And let me tell you, and this is something way back again in my journey, I am an emotional person. And so I would project my sorry emotions on people. Can you
said that and I was smiling like, we hadn't noticed, Susie.
You had not noticed I'm emotional at all, or an extrovert, which I know not everybody is. But I would project my emotions. I also cry very easily. Yeah. And while it is genuine and authentic to share vulnerable emotions and show them, please do not take this message to deter that. In certain situations, when it's overly emotional, and I'm not necessarily talking about crying, but when it's over apologizing, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, you know, I've done it. That's why I'm sharing it, okay? Yeah. It just projects so much more on the other person that is most likely hurting in some way. Yes. And then another approach, you know, I'm sorry for in the future or moving forward, I will state it, own it, say, I'm really trying to be an active ally. Don't think I got it right this time, but this is what I'm apologizing for. I am going to continue to be that ally. And then if it's something, a situation or something's going on you have a question about, you can, depending on the person's situation, ask a question of, I would love to speak about this further. However, I know that work is on me and not you. Because in apologies also, specifically apologies, what goes wrong when you're apologizing already, and again, this is because I've been through these and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people about this. By accident, you're projecting more work on somebody most of the time that's in an underrepresented group that is already hurting, that is already tired, and has already been voluntold to be a representative and the answer to all the questions about whatever it may be. And so, and I'll pause here, voluntold.
Well,
when I say,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll wrap up there. But I also want to say, so maybe I just said something and just say, I do that all the time, or I've done that. But one, I'm sharing with you, I'm sharing that vulnerable space. Number two, that I am not here to seek shame or guilt. We are here today for action and education. Those two things are so much more powerful than those other feelings. So it's okay if we've messed it up. It is okay. What we do is learn, own, and move forward. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Just so you know, I wasn't ignoring you. I actually went out to Amazon, and I want to ask you, is this the book?
Yes, that's it.
So talk about what you can do with PowerPoint on the fly. While you were talking, I created the slide, I downloaded the picture, I got the thing, and I would share the link, but I don't want to be I don't want to be promoting the book. But now you have the title.
Right. Yes, and I don't know her personally. As I said, both of us disclaimer, but she's really taken taken some really positive, impactful space in the allyship world. And it's just that I actually follow her along on LinkedIn and Instagram a little bit. And I just have learned a lot. And she's extremely straightforward and very honest, but has taken some organizations on a great journey. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I wanted to share it here. So here's the next slide. We had these things in here already because the idea was giving somebody something to then do as a next step after today's webinar. So I'm looking at the time. Let's do a polling question, and then we'll jump into Q&A. Is that okay?
Sure.
So Vaughn, I think we're now at question about DEI strategy.
Yes. Okay. Allyship, part of your organization. Let's go ahead and launch that poll. There you are. We have your third poll for your CPE credit on your screens now. So again, this is poll number 3. We do have one more poll. We'll go ahead and launch that probably towards the very end of our session.
You know, I realize now that maybe one of the options should have said, I don't know if we have a D&I strategy. So I probably should have created some space for that one. But we have quite a few questions in here. Some of them might be comments. So I just want to make sure we sort of work our way. Karen said, by the way, it's okay to practice. And I think that came in when you were talking about, just trying. It doesn't have to be right. Just keep going.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about practicing a lot. Sometimes I'll say practice without penalty, but there are consequences to our actions, however, but that practice is important. Awesome.
Well, and we know sometimes you can find somebody in your organization that's a safe person to talk to, and sometimes going to that person can help you work out what you need to do or what you want to say to go to the other person. Carefully. I mean, you don't want to start. It's not about talking about somebody behind their back. It's about understanding, how do I communicate my intention? All right, we're over. So you want to?
I'm also going to do it. Intentionally close this poll right now. So I'm going to do that. I'll go ahead and share the results on your screens.
Way to work that in, Vaughn. So we have a third said yes. A quarter said no, and everyone else said I'm not sure.
And right there, that's a great act of allyship that you could do organizationally. Dig on that. Ask, and I do want to talk about DEI strategy a little bit just on this. So do you know if there, I love that. Is there actually a strategy? If so, what does that entail? Because, and something at the diversity movement we really do and kind of we talk about a lot is we want better business outcomes. We unlock workplace excellence. And the way that you really can do that, and getting back to DEI strategy, is DEI strategy has to be in every facet of every part of strategy in the entire organization, top to bottom, inside and out. And a lot of times, and this is changing, and it's changing rapidly, DEI has been this thing floating on the side, right? And that's why, and then funding gets cut. Positions get cut for it because, well, this is not working. Well, it's not working because it's not completely embedded throughout. And also, DEI diversity really doesn't work without inclusion, right? And so that's another statement just to kind of wrap that up. But ask about the strategy. Do you know it? Do you not know it? And is the strategy separate from everything else? Because if it is, that's a great thing of saying, hey, we need to look at this, specifically allyship, unconscious bias, inclusive language, and lots of underrepresented groups. What is the attention there? Policies, procedures. Those are acts of allyship. Think about what you can review, what you can ask about, and that strategy really, that's got to be just all throughout, inside out, upside down, as I say.
What I'm hopeful for is that the 42% said I'm not sure, and they're not sure because their organization offers allyship training, but it's not explicitly stated as part of the D&I strategy. So they're doing the right things, even if it's not labeled DEI. All right, so I promised some questions.
Yes.
We have a few minutes. I think some of these are comments, but then you can respond.
Okay.
Sadly, the reason, Anthony says, sadly, the reason folks sometimes don't step up is rooted in economics, job advancements, livelihood security, etc.
Yes, that's what I'd say is risk.
Thank you.
So risk, that can also be a roadblock, right? That is so true. Thank you for stating that. So we have to assess our risk we have to do our own risk assessment in allyship, right? And I know that I'm talking to C-suite saying now the conversation has changed from DEI as a risk to DEI is actually one of the best business strategies for your bottom line in an organization you can have. And there's data to support that. But the risk, the personal risk. So you can find spaces to be active while not having high risk.
Yeah.
As well. But I totally understand. Totally understand.
Susan said, in office meetings, I find a strong glare conveys a lot and can lead to meaningful discussions. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking she's a strong, meaningful glare.
Yeah. Yes.
Michael said, I struggle with intent. Sometimes I think that intent does not matter, but the consequences of your actions.
Mm-hmm. Right, the intent versus reception. So meaning, yeah, the reception or the consequences, the outcome will overshadow or outweigh. And that happens sometimes, right? That goes back to when it just doesn't go right. But yes.
Document incident. Okay, I can't even read. Document incidents. Ask EEO. Not exactly sure. So Catherine, you put that in. Maybe what you can do is drop in a second question so that I know what it was you were trying to ask or share.
Sometimes it's that you personally document incidents, and yes, we can wait, but making sure there's a documentation option for incidents, discrimination, anything like that. So some organizations will have a anonymous portal, like just a full out portal, right, to report things. And on that, making sure your organization has a clear-cut and well-communicated policy on what happens after that. So holding people accountable.
There's a question, but I wanted to ask you, I just realized there was something we had talked about before. Mm-hmm. And it had to do with the emotional things that we feel, like some of the emotions that might keep us from acting up. Are there things that we can be scanning for? Like if I'm feeling this, that might be a clue that I'm holding back. I don't know if that was the way you framed it, but that's what I wrote in my notes.
I think it was in reference to that radar, and when do you feel like, and to somebody's point and question they brought up to us, is it something right in the moment? Is it something after? What are we feeling? So again, in that confidence is probably in the lack of confidence, the fear, and then the receptors of just knowing when something's not right.
All right, so I think in our last 2 minutes, I'm going to throw 2 more at you. So I think this might be a comment, but you can respond. Silence equals sleepless nights. Speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable, equals a better night's sleep.
I love that. That's
there
great.
You go.
Thank you.
Karen should be our next speaker because that was Karen's.
Karen, yes. Love that.
And then this one says, sometimes a person needs an entire history, biology, ethics overhaul. These situations are chronic and will take lots of time to go through with the person. This is difficult.
Yes. Yes, it is. And you are correct. And again, that's where we need to assess who we're with, why we're with them. What is the situation of they may be way over here outside, not even going to come on the path with us on this journey. And some people are over here, and we're just trying to catch up. And so with that, yes, that's the truth. It just depends on the situation. And when you have I don't even really like the word skeptic, but that situation, that person, I'm going to talk to the organization specifically. How do I even start this? Link to the organization's mission, vision, and values over again, to the point that DEI needs to be everywhere, the lens everywhere, and then also find the data on the business return.
Yeah.
That generally, really honestly helps, just some start and framework, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's a hard place to be. I
love the idea that just reminding us all that what you started with, this is a journey. It is not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us. I will share with everyone in 2 weeks, this is a biweekly series, and in 2 weeks, Megan Pollock, she started a company called Engineering Inclusion, and we're going to be talking about inclusive leadership because we've been hearing a lot about that.
Oh, yes.
It's really good. So in the meantime, I know we have one more poll, and then Vaughn, you're going to take us home, so to speak. Oh, before you do that, I will say that at the bottom of the slides, all of these little bubbles here are clickable. On my slide, as well as the bio slide for you, Susie. If they go to your slide and click along the bottom, they will be able to click through to the website and your social media.
Please.
Yeah.
Yes, please reach out, LinkedIn, email, anything. I would love to connect. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and everyone here. It's just an honor.
Well, thank you. We're glad to have you. All right, Vaughn, back to you.
All right, let's go ahead and get that fourth poll up on your screens. Of course, you only need 3 for credit, but here's a fourth one, just to also give us a little feedback of, like, you know, what was the most valuable part of today's webinar. So go ahead and answer that. And I'll give you all your 60 seconds just to make sure y'all can get your time in. And just remember to our attendees that we will process your CPA credit once we're done, and we'll get that into your CPA Academy account in about 24 hours. So go ahead and check that out. And remember, in your account is where you'll also have a link to this recording. You'll also have the handouts with all of those great links to Jina and Susie's contact information all over the interwebs. So that'd be fantastic for you to contact them. And we're getting close to our poll being done. I'll give you all about another 5 seconds.
I have in here, Susie, a couple of people who threw into the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Insightful.
That's so nice. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to close this poll down. So thank you all for your responses. And yes, to that point right there, there are some really nice comments coming to that questions panel. So don't forget to jump on over to your inbox, because we have an evaluation form waiting for you there, because we definitely welcome and appreciate your feedback, because we'd love to hear from you. Again, it's also in your CPA Academy account. But Jina, Susie, thank you so much. I personally, I just love being on your sessions. It's just so great. And I just learned so much, and some really insightful information. So definitely appreciate all of your time and your expertise in coming onto our platform and sharing with our audience. So thank you to you. And everyone out there, check out our schedule on cpaacademy.org, because I hope to see you all on future webinars. But for now, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Muted.